Hello, today we begin Module 2, Human and Society. In this module, we will study Chapter 3, Culture, and Chapter 4, Socialization. Many of you will find these chapters among the most interesting this semester, and also entertaining. When we deal with other cultures, our reactions can range from feelings of joy, fascination, and enlightenment to those of frustration, anger, and depression. However, it's important to understand that every culture is valid. It's just a way to adapt to your own environment. There are vast differences in the environmental conditions across our planet, and so cultures are different too. Therefore, we can't really claim that one culture is better than the other. They're just different. So in Chapter 3, we'll study why they're different and how we react to those differences. Having achieved this knowledge, hopefully you will no longer have negative emotions during new cultural encounters, just the positive ones, or at least neutral. The relationship between human and society is one of the fundamental areas of sociological study. In this chapter, we'll examine definitions of culture, its elements, beliefs, values, and norms, how geographic and historical forces shape the character of culture, how we acquire culture, how it affects us, and how we use culture to adjust to our environment, how different societies constantly borrow cultural elements from each other, how a person could be less ethnocentric and a little bit more of a cultural relativist, and also how there are different subcultures within society's main culture. Finally, you'll be asked to take a short cultural IQ test to see how much you already know about other cultures. Enjoy. Culture and Society. For your convenience, the content of this lecture is divided into 9 principles. As I explain each of them, I will ask you to participate in different activities. They are fun and will help you memorize the material. So before we proceed, please hit the pause button and make sure you have your notebook and your pen handy. Are you ready? Here's a little exercise for you. We use words culture and cultural all the time. And when we do, what meaning are we trying to convey? What is culture? Pause the lecture and write down as many definitions of culture as you can think of. Then we'll compare our notes. So this activity is a segue to principle number 1. Culture has many different meanings, but in sociology, it is most frequently used to mean a way of life. What definitions do you have? They're probably similar to what I have on the following list. First of all, culture is a Latin word, culturare, which means to cultivate. So, as you can imagine, it was originally used in agriculture. When you are cultivating something, it basically means that you are farming, you are growing, and you are breeding. Also, there are different cultures of bacteria. They put some useful bacterial cultures in yogurt, for example, which then populate your intestines and help your digestive system, as well as fight some infections. Well, obviously, this is not the way we are going to use the word culture in sociology. Let's take a look at some of the more relevant definitions that have to do with society. Culture may refer to arts and intellectual activities. High culture would involve going to a museum, a theater, an ethnic festival, and other cultural events, whereas watching football with some beer and nachos would be an example of mass culture or popular culture. Next, culture is used in contrast with biological factors. We can say that your personality is a product of biological factors, your heredity, and cultural factors, the way you were raised. It's the famous nature versus nurture debate. Culture may also be used in contrast with natural environment. Everything that is man-made, that is artificial, constitutes culture. In this context, the word culture is synonymous with the word civilization. We could say that the first human civilizations started to appear about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. Or we could say that ancient cultures started to emerge 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. In colloquial language, culture may be used in contrast with the material, meaning something spiritual, something intangible. Someone could argue that the modern society is too materialistic and lacks cultural values. Culture may be used as an expression of a particular period, class, community, and so forth. For example, Renaissance culture, American culture versus Japanese culture, student culture, hippie culture, working class culture, and so forth. Next, culture as predominating attitudes and behavior. What is the American culture? Americans value freedom, individuality, hard work, entrepreneurship, wealth, religion, and other things. These are the predominating attitudes and behaviors here. Culture is a kind of social cement that keeps social institutions together. Remember how Karl Marx said that economic system is the base of every society, whereas culture is part of the superstructure. Well, this is the opposite view. Culture is the base of every society. Culture determines how our political, economic, family, educational, and other institutions function. Culture as a divider and culture as a uniter. Over 300 million of Americans are united by certain cultural values that we call American values. Then different groups in our society also form their own subcultures, which makes them different and divide our society. For example, it seems that Americans have always been very divided by their political views. So remember the first principle. Culture can mean many different things, but in this class we're using its most general meaning, which is a way of life. Principle number 2. Culture consists of material and non-material components. Material culture would include all physical creations that humans make. Look around. What physical objects do you see? A computer, phone, chair, car, clothes, TV cable, carpet, picture frame, light bulb. Those are all examples of material culture. Non-material culture means intangible human creations such as beliefs, values, and norms. We can't see them, but we know they exist. For example, we believe in democracy, we value independence, and norms of our society tell us to help other people. There are two kinds of norms, folkways and mores. What are folkways and what are mores? Folkways are cultural norms that regulate minor daily aspects of our lives. What to have for breakfast, how to dress for a Halloween party, what present to buy for grandma's birthday, different business etiquette norms, and others. If someone violates folkways, the reaction they get from others can range from being ridiculed to being ostracized. Mores, on the other hand, are cultural norms that regulate the most important areas of our lives. When they are violated, the very existence of our society is threatened. That's why typically mores are written formal laws, whereas folkways are usually unspoken informal rules. Examples of mores would be laws that prohibit theft, murder, and fraud, laws that regulate citizenship and immigration matters, gun control laws, voting laws, laws that require to have insurance, and so forth. Now, it's very important to remember that material and non-material components are inseparable. Physical human creations embody our beliefs, values, and norms. A voting ballot, material culture, embodies our belief in democracy, non-material culture. A television set, material culture, embodies such values as pleasure and entertainment, non-material culture. A plastic payment card has replaced cash in most people's wallets, material culture, which indicates that this is now the normal way of conducting business transactions, non-material culture. Again, they are inseparable. Material culture plus non-material culture equals complete culture. Let's see what happens if one of these two components is missing. You all heard the legend of Atlantis. Several thousand years ago, there was a continent in the Atlantic Ocean where a very prosperous and technologically advanced civilization existed. But then some horrible catastrophe happened. The land sank into the ocean and everyone died. How do we know about this legend? This story was recorded by Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher whom we consider to be one of the greatest minds in human history. Modern scientists rely on his ideas all the time. Then why is it that we don't believe in his very detailed account about Atlantis? It's simple. Yes, he described their non-material culture, but we never found any objects of material culture from that civilization. Therefore, we can't really claim that, to our knowledge, such civilization existed. Until we discover some physical evidence, it will remain a myth, along with stories about dragons, vampires, UFOs, fountains of youth, Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, Sasquatch, and many others. And now the opposite example, Stonehenge. Obviously a huge pile of physical evidence. But evidence of what? Who built it? When was it built? Why was it built? How was it built? We don't have those answers. No one left any stories about that ancient civilization. Therefore, because the non-material component is missing, this too is an incomplete culture, so to speak. And here's our modern culture. We value independence, time, information, mobility, and productivity, and it is normal for us to rely on information and communication technology all the time. Numerous electronic gadgets exist as an embodiment of these beliefs, values, and norms. So this is a complete culture that we can study and understand. But let's use scientific fiction here, and imagine for a moment that we too sank into the ocean one day. Then, in the year 5084, people will read about an ancient civilization that spent most of their time on Facebook and Twitter, and they'll say, no way, it's a myth. Without any physical evidence, stories about how we live today may sound unbelievable to future generations. Or let's say we go 100% paperless and store all the information on digital media. A global computer virus wipes out all the information, so we lose all our knowledge, become completely helpless, and go back to Stone Age. Then in the year 5084, a small tribe of people, while digging for some edible roots, discovers an iPhone. Of course, to them, it will have no meaning. It won't tell them anything about our civilization, and they'll use it as a nutcracker. Alright, so now you see how material and non-material cultural components are always inseparable. Principle number 3. Geographic and historical forces shape the character of culture. Space and time influence our way of life. You can't argue with that. Take a look at these pictures. What do you see? It's the Amsterdam red light district where, in the storefront windows, prostitutes advertise their services, and a coffee shop where you can order not only a latte but also a joint. And while a cannabis cigarette can be smoked inside, to smoke tobacco, you'd have to step outside. Are you shocked? Now, do you realize that these things are perfectly legal in the Netherlands. Prostitutes are unionized, tax-paying, hard-working citizens. Probably have a pension plan too. Light drugs are legal. Same-sex marriages are legal. Adoption by same-sex couples is legal. Euthanasia is legal. And some other things that are illegal here are allowed over there. So the question is, why are they so tolerant in the Netherlands? And to answer this question, you have to somehow factor in geographic and historical forces. What is it about their geography or their history that makes them so accepting? Do you know? The Dutch immigrants who settled in South Africa were certainly not very accepting. So we know it's not genetic. Well, here is one possible explanation that has to do with geography. What does the name Netherlands mean? Its literal translation is underland or lowlands, and for good reason. About 1/4 of this little European country is located below the sea level. People have always had to work together to build dams and fight flooding. Furthermore, the country is really overpopulated by our standards. The population density in the United States is approximately 80 people per square mile. The population density in the Netherlands is over 1,000 people per square mile. Imagine that. What is this picture? Apparently, cars are not a very popular choice of transportation in the Netherlands due to limited space. People mostly use bicycles. They even have multi-story parking lots for bicycles. So how do you find your bicycle here? A lot of times you don't. Just grab the one you like and pedal away. Bicycle theft is actually the #1 crime in the Netherlands, but of course no one bothers to investigate it. So, when you live on top of each other, you'd better learn to be accepting of individual differences. You don't have the luxury to live in a bubble like you do here. Either learn to deal with diversity in a positive way or kiss your sanity goodbye. And something I should mention here, although it's not entirely scientific. According to a report published by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in May 2011, the Netherlands was the happiest country in the world. The United States did not make the top 10. As you can see, tolerance makes for a happy society. So anyway, this is just one example of how geographic and historical forces can shape the character of culture. There are many other examples. Ever wondered why countries with hot climates always have a very spicy cuisine? Yep, because historically, without refrigeration, spices help with the funky smell of spoiled food. By the way, it's the same reason why we traditionally eat different kinds of jelly with meat. Why do we eat chicken and beef in the United States while they eat snakes and dogs in Asia? Because that's the kind of animal that populated those specific areas. Why are New Yorkers notoriously rude again? Because life in such a huge metropolis is very hectic and impersonal. When I worked as an applied sociologist and had to survey people, guess where it was the hardest to find volunteers to fill out my questionnaires? A busy district with multi-story apartment buildings was by far the least desirable place to visit. No one would even open the door for me. As a stark contrast to that, homeowners in small towns never turned down my request, not even once. So, where you live definitely influences your way of life. Principle number 4. Culture is learned. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Yet so many times I witnessed how a well-intentioned white American would say to, for example, an Asian American, "Your English is very good." "What do you mean my English is very good? It's the only language I speak. I was born and raised here just like you." Just because someone is of Asian ancestry doesn't mean that they speak Chinese and know Kung Fu. These things are not genetic, they are learned. So again, culture is learned. And what's important here, Language is a tool for learning culture and also a mirror that reflects culture. Basically, it's two sides of the same coin, but let me explain what each statement means. As we learn our native tongue, we also learn the mentality of our native people, the way they think, and their history. And typically, we don't even notice this, but let's see what happens if you try to learn a foreign language. Have you ever tried to learn a foreign language? What is the hardest part of it? When you are taught a foreign language, they tell you to memorize a bunch of new words, then make a sentence and substitute foreign words for English words, and you'll have gibberish. A native speaker will not understand you, and you will not understand the native speaker. Why is that? To be able to speak in a foreign language, you have to be able to think in that foreign language. How do you learn to think in a foreign language? Through cultural immersion. You have to learn the culture and the history of that country if you want to be fluent in their language. You will have to become one of them. Let me give you a concrete example. Just as any other language, English has many phrases that have no literal meaning. It's a figure of speech. They're called idioms. To go see a man about a horse. To rain cats and dogs. To cost an arm and a leg. To fly by the seat of one's pants. A foreigner may get pretty scared if you ask them to pay an arm and a leg. A foreigner has no way of knowing what in the world these sayings mean. As a child, you have the unique ability to subconsciously learn the meaning of these sayings without questioning them. As an adult trying to learn a foreign language, you will have to do some serious research to understand these expressions. You'll have to learn when and where they originated. Yes, that's what I had to do in order to understand and correctly memorize these sayings. So, to go see a man about a horse originated when horse and dog races were very popular. During a conversation, it was common for gentlemen to abruptly leave and quickly go place a bet on a racehorse or on a race dog. That was an urgent business. Going to the bathroom is also an urgent business. And so, to avoid feeling awkward, that's what gentlemen started saying. I'm going to go see a man about a horse, or about a dog now. To rain cats and dogs. Apparently, one day it rained so hard in England that all the streets were flooded. When people were finally able to open their doors and step outside, they saw that all the cats and dogs had drowned and their bodies covered the streets. It did look as though it had rained cats and dogs. To cost an arm and a leg. I can only guess where this saying came from, and I don't really want to know. To fly by the seat of one's pants. I really had a problem understanding or memorizing this one until I researched it. So during the Second World War, aircrafts had pretty inferior navigation equipment which would die on the pilot without any warning quite often, especially in stormy weather. So how do you fly a plane when you don't know where you are and there is zero visibility? They had to sort of feel the vibration of the aircraft to get some idea of where they were and where they were going. So the pilot was literally flying by the seat of his pants. Today it means to do something intuitively. And now, I want you to experience what it's like trying to understand and memorize such sayings. In this activity, I'm giving you some pretty common Russian and Ukrainian expressions, and you'll have to figure out what they mean. So when someone from Russia or Ukraine says to you, "Don't pour salt over my wound," elderberry grows in the garden and your uncle lives in Kiev. I feel like I'm not in my plate. Is your roof sliding away? It's like buying a cat in a bag. Make a notch on your nose. The milk on your lips hasn't dried up yet. This is where the dog is buried. Can you guess what they mean? How would you feel if people around you talk like this all the time? Okay, I'm going to make it much easier for you. These are your options. Don't bring up a sensitive topic. Have you gone mad? I feel awkward. Remember once and for all, this is what it's all about. You are saying nonsense. You are too young and inexperienced. You don't really know what you're getting. So try to match them now. If you match all 8 correctly, I will give you 4 extra credit points. Now back to that second statement. Language reflects one's culture. Historically, major changes happen in every society, and it's reflected in the language, of course. For example, thanks to the women's liberation movement in America, we now try to eradicate sexist language, and we say business person instead of businessman, or police officer instead of policeman. Young people who grew up surrounded by digital technology are trying to replace written English with texting English, lots of numbers, letters, and symbols instead of words. So, as you can see, by studying language, you can also study culture. And here's another example about my former struggles with the English language. I used to wonder why there were so many English words to describe the emotion of fear. Daunting, spooky, petrified, abhorrent, formidable, shocked, affright, appalling, eerie, to intimidate, to startle, to consternate, to scare, to frighten, to fear, to terrify, to horrify, to dread, to be afraid, to terrorize, and the list goes on. You see, in Ukrainian, I can't even think of 5 words that describe fear. In English, I just counted 20. So what conclusion should I make? Americans are all scaredy cats, right? Well, no, but it would be an interesting study. If you ask me, my hypothesis is that when the British monarchy controlled 1/4 of the world, a lot of indigenous words entered the English language. Because their control was based on terror, a lot of those words must have been associated with fear. Principle number 5. People are products of cultural experiences, but are not cultural replicas of one another. If you travel to a foreign country, people will easily recognize you as an American. Do you agree? It's a true statement for most Americans, if not all. There is something uniquely American about the 300 million people that live here. And this commonality is not surprising at all, considering that we have the same cultural experiences in this country. We use the same currency, we are exposed to the same media, we have the same government, we have the same education system. Almost every town in America has a Walmart store and a McDonald's restaurant. Almost everything is the same. But get your notebook ready. We're going to do another exercise. Hit the pause button and take 5 minutes to draw your dream house. It doesn't have to be a very detailed picture, it's just to give a general idea of what you're looking for. I will draw my dream house and then we'll compare our drawing. Ready? Go. Okay, it's been 5 minutes now. I hope you finished your picture because mine is ready. Here it is. This is my dream house. Is it exactly the same as yours? Probably not. Other than those artists who can only draw a box with a triangle on top, most people will also have very different pictures. So what does it tell us? It tells us that people are not cultural replicas of one another, even though we may have the same cultural experiences. This is where sociologists who typically study only collective behaviors recognize that people have important individual differences. By the way, the best way to do this exercise is to find a partner, hold one pen together, and simultaneously on the same piece of paper, each of you will draw your dream house without talking to each other. See how far you can get. Principle number 6. Culture is the tool that enables the individual to adjust to the problems of living. Unlike animals who rely on their instincts to survive, Humans receive cultural formulas from society that tell them how to take care of themselves, what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, how to dress, what to eat and drink, where to go and where not to go, what's safe and what's dangerous, and so forth. We have to be taught all these things. Here we have two examples of cultural formulas that enable us to live in our environment. Cultural formulas for social emotions tell us how to express ourselves when we are among other people. What is the appropriate way to show curiosity, friendship, sorrow, happiness, anger, love, serious or laid-back attitude, and other emotions in public? In some countries, you wear black clothes to the funeral and cry, while in others you wear white clothes and laugh. In this picture, do they show their emotions appropriately? Well, in this society, this would not be an acceptable way to indicate your friendly attitude, two males holding hands. But in Saudi Arabia, it is. In Ukraine, men shake hands to greet each other. Men do not shake hands with women. It's inappropriate. In fact, it's called a hand squeeze and is a masculine gesture. One time, an American Red Cross volunteer was spending several months in my city, and she tried to shake hands with me while a large group of people were watching. She had a short haircut and was wearing some hiking clothes, and I just stood there and stared at her, trying to determine if she was a boy or a girl. We were both embarrassed. Also, while visiting Belgium, I was quite surprised when I saw men kissing each other as a form of greeting. So these are cultural formulas for social emotions. And now we have cultural formulas for hunger. You may think that it's your taste buds that tell you what tastes good and what tastes bad, and partially it's true. But mostly it's your culture that tells you what to eat and what not to eat. When I moved to the United States, my wife tried to impress me with different ethnic dishes that she made, such as Mexican, Indian, and Middle Eastern dishes. She would also cook some American delicacies, and I hated all of them. She was offended, and I was depressed. We were at the breaking point when I absolutely refused to even touch her clam chowder. I'd rather starve than put some nasty snails in my mouth. But having lived here for a while, I can now eat most of those dishes, except clams. In particular, having lived in Arizona for 4 years, I really like Mexican food now. So it's your culture that tells you what to eat. Next, we're going to watch a slideshow, Food Around the World. You'll learn what is considered very tasty in other cultures. But let me give you a fair warning. If you just ate your breakfast, lunch, dinner, or are about to, you'd be better off skipping this part. We begin with Vietnam. Here, red meat is as common as any other type of meat, but it's considerably cheaper, about $1 per pound. So how many pounds of red meat would you like for dinner? Next, we have dog meat, commonly eaten in the Philippines. So much for being your best friend. Mud pies are eaten in Haiti, probably not because it's a delicacy, but because of extreme poverty. There's still some minerals in dirt, though. Well, dog penis is a delicacy in China. I wonder if it has some ritualistic or symbolic meaning, like the next delicacy, dried seahorse. This one is believed to increase your libido. Deep-fried guinea pigs in Peru. I used to keep one as a pet. And you can wash it down with a glass of frog smoothie. They say it's good for medicinal purposes too. How about some fried spiders in Cambodia? They put some garlic, black pepper, and other spices on it. Reportedly, it tastes like chicken, but crispier. In Thailand, you can sample some rice wine fermented with scorpions. It's supposed to be very healthy. Snakes are also eaten in Vietnam. It's actually common in the American Southwest too, so we're not that surprised. How about some whale meat in Japan? It's also supposed to be healthy, and it takes a very long time to cook. And for dessert, you can have some wasp crackers. In Chad, Africa, a handful of locusts would be a much healthier snack than a bag of potato chips. Cat roast in Ivory Coast? Ouch. It's a good thing my cat Seymour is super skinny and very, very hairy. Not worth it. And another bug platter in Thailand. And finally, yes, caviar, a huge delicacy and status symbol in Ukraine and Russia. I really like it and miss it. You can't find it here. Have you ever tried it? And I see how people here would say, yuck, it's disgusting. It's fish eggs and they burst in your mouth. I agree, but that's what it's all about. You learn from your culture what is tasty, nutritious, and healthy. And it is, because you see how people from other cultures who eat what you would consider non-food items live long and healthy lives. So everything is relative. Principle number 7. People borrow material and non-material culture from other societies. Of course, we are not isolated from one another, and cultural exchanges happen all the time. Even in North Korea and the Soviet Union, countries hidden behind the Iron Curtain, you could still find certain things from the United States and other parts of the world. Here are just a few examples of how material and non-material cultural elements can travel from one country to another. Hip-hop and rap are popular in Japan, and so is baseball. Of course, they borrowed them from the United States, but baseball first originated in England. Soccer is becoming more popular in the United States. The major soccer league is currently drafting top athletes from Europe, and the US national soccer team, both male and female, is becoming better and better. While in Arizona, I played in this Sierra Vista Soccer League on a co-ed team. This last picture is Yalta, Ukraine. It's a very famous seaside resort. During the Second World War, American President Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Churchill, and the Soviet leader Stalin held a conference there. So it's a very unique city full of tourist attractions. I have an interesting story to go with this. My friend and I were visiting Yalta for the first time in 2001. We were on a business trip actually, but had several hours left to do some sightseeing. Because we didn't have that much time, we thought we'd ask locals what the most important attractions were, the ones that we absolutely couldn't afford to miss. So we asked this question one local lady. Guess what she replied? She said, "Oh, we just got a McDonald's restaurant. You gotta go see it." Of all the historical attractions, that's what she recommended. And by the way, in this picture, you can see how they still have the statue of Lenin in their central square. He was the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917 and the architect of Soviet communism. And right next to Lenin, there is a McDonald's restaurant and a Coca-Cola truck, both universal symbols of capitalism, which he fought against all his life. Ironic, isn't it? So this process in which people borrow material and non-material culture from other societies is called cultural diffusion. Remember this term. Principle number 8. The home culture is the standard that people use to make judgments about the culture of another society. When they do that, they are said to be ethnocentric. It's very important for you to remember what this means. It's the most important term in this whole chapter. The Greek word ethnos means nation, people. So literally ethnocentrism means that you are centered on your nation, your people, and your culture. You think that your culture is the best, that it's normal while other cultures are weird. Actually, this is nothing to be ashamed of. It's perfectly natural to think that your country is the best, just like parents think that their child is the best. You should love your country and be proud of it. In other words, be patriotic. But everything is good in moderation. If you are too centered on your own culture and can't even imagine that in other parts of the world people could do things differently, you risk experiencing culture shock. And it can be pretty severe. Have you experienced any culture shocks? What do you think about the picture on your left? When I moved to the United States, I already knew a lot about American culture. I didn't think anything would shock me. But I did experience one culture shock right away. My wife and I went to the swimming pool in our apartment complex, and guess what? I was the only guy wearing Speedos. It wasn't fun. So I went to Target and got myself those baggy shorts that all American men wear. Now, having been Americanized when I visited Ukraine, I find a lot of things that used to seem normal to me quite shocking. We call this re-entry shock. So how do you prevent these culture shocks and re-entry shocks? The answer is cultural relativism. This is my goal for the semester, to turn you into cultural relativists. I want to show you that no culture is absolutely the best. It could only be the best in relation to the physical environment you live in. For example, people in America tend to have very negative views on polygamy. In later chapters, I will show you that for some societies, it is the best form of marriage. They wouldn't even survive if they practiced monogamy due to their natural environment. So, being a cultural relativist means that you can see a foreign culture through the eyes of the insider. You can understand why they make certain choices and try to respect those choices. Culture is simply a way to adapt to your environment. Therefore, every culture is valid. Are you now ready to find out why men in Europe wear Speedos? Well, first of all, people are a little thinner in Europe. I know the guy in the picture is not. And it looks better than in the picture. Second of all, why do you think Europeans go to the beach in the first place? In America, people go to the swimming pool to soak in a hot tub and to grill. It actually makes sense to wear large shorts with lots of pockets. In Europe, you go to the beach to A. Sunbathe and get a nice tan, and B. Swim. Both activities require as little clothes as possible. You would simply drown in those huge American shorts if you attempted to swim across the lake, for example. And men do like to swim long distances and compete against each other, while ladies may enjoy tanning topless. So this explains the differences in bathing suits. Nothing weird here. There's also a very good explanation for why Europeans drive little economy cars while Americans drive huge trucks and SUVs. Generally, there is a good explanation for everything. Now look at the picture on your right. What do you think about the Muslim Barbie doll? A lot of Americans believe that Muslim women have no rights and are oppressed because they are required to wear a hijab, which is a headscarf, or a burqa, which is a full-body cloak. Unfortunately, it is the case in some Muslim countries, but definitely not in most of them. Why don't we ask Muslim women what they think about these dress customs? Here's what one woman had to say. If women living in Western societies took an honest look at themselves, such a question as to why Muslim women are covered would not arise. They are the slaves of appearance and the puppets of male chauvinistic society. Every magazine and news medium tells them how they should look and behave. They should wear glamorous clothes and make themselves beautiful for strange men to gaze and gloat over them. So the question is not why Muslim women wear hijab, but why the women in the West, who think they are so liberated, do not wear hijab. She thinks they are actually more liberated than American women. Does she have a point here? Let's see. How much time does an average American man spend in the morning getting ready for work? How much time does an average American woman spend in the morning getting ready for work? Of course, no one will stone a woman who didn't shave her legs in America, right? But boy, will she be ridiculed. At the same time, will a man who didn't shave his face be ridiculed? Nope. His 5 o'clock shadow is considered sexy. So, That's exactly why we should be cultural relativists. Should recognize that we have our problems too and try to understand and respect other cultures. And the last definition here is reversed ethnocentrism. If ethnocentrism means that you consider your home culture the best, what would the prefix reverse imply? Reverse ethnocentrism means that you consider your home culture the worst and envy people from other countries. Although it does happen here sometimes, it's much more prevalent in the post-Soviet republics where lots of people would be happy to emigrate to a different country. And they do in large numbers. It doesn't help that they've had access to American movies and TV shows since the late 1980s. Of course, after watching American soap operas such as Dallas, Santa Barbara, Beverly Hills, they've come to the conclusion that Americans barely work, live in mansions, own yachts and luxury cars, and spend most of their time partying and dating. So they think their home culture stinks and want to come live in America. All I can say is they'd better do some research first. How about Americans? Do you think that most people here have a pretty good knowledge of other countries? Are Americans good at world geography? Let's watch a video clip.
You ready? The third grade world geography question is: Budapest is the capital of what European country? Budapest is the capital of what European country Nathan has already locked in?
This might be a stupid question.
I'm guessing it's probably going to be.
Like, I thought Europe was a country. Let's see. Budapest? I never even heard of that.
All right, here's your options. I mean, you could drop out with $10,000. But
like, I know they speak French there, don't they? Like, I want to say, is France a country? I don't know what I'm doing.
You know what? Let's talk about your options.
Okay.
Kel.
Yes.
Focus.
I am. Like, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I only hear what I want to.
That's just called being a woman.
Well, we could just call the show "Are You Smarter Than a Man?"
No, because women don't really want to hear a man's opinion. They just want to hear their opinion in a deeper voice. That's what they want when they talk to us. Let's talk about this. I really want you to get to $25,000 because no matter what happens after that, you're walking out of here with $25,000.
All about the charity, so
it is.
I gotta think what's best for them. Let's see. I am just going to copy.
Copy.
Come on, Nathan.
If you had to guess, do you have a guess?
I don't think France is a country, but I would have said that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going to say France. I don't know.
Okay. France is a country. I will tell you that.
Is?
If you had said France, you would have gone home with nothing. That is not the right answer. The right answer is Hungary.
Is what?
Hungry.
Hungry?
Like I'm hungry.
That's a country? I've heard of Turkey, but Hungary, never heard of it.
But the answer is Hungary. So, if Nathan said Hungary, your charity's got $25,000. If he didn't, you walk away with nothing.
Nathan. Hear that smile? Oh.
Kelly, take a look at the board. For $25,000, your fifth grade classmate Nathan said, Hungry!
Ray, you're the best. Thank you. Yay! You tried to trick me. He tricked me.
He tricked you?
Yeah, I was looking at his face and he looked like, oh, I messed it up. I failed, but you got it right. Yay!
So what do you think? Does she represent the majority in this country? Did you know that Europe was not a country? Have you ever heard about Hungary and Budapest? Do you think you're smarter than a 5th grader? Well, because I do want you to become cultural relativists, we will begin this transformation by testing your current cultural IQ. Get your notebooks and pens ready. We'll take a short multiple choice test. I'll read the questions and you'll pick the best answers. Here we go. First question. Originating back to the Western Han Dynasty, chopsticks are the eating utensils for China and much of Asia. What is the meaning behind giving chopsticks as a gift to a bride and groom in China? A. It wishes for the early arrival of a son. B. It wishes for an everlasting marriage. C. It wishes for a prosperous financial future. Number 2. The people of which European country drink the greatest amount of beer per capita in the world? A. Belgium. B. Germany. C. Czech Republic. D. Wisconsin. Number 3. In Germany, what is the suggested tip after eating a meal in a restaurant? A. Nothing. B. 10%. C. 15%. Next. True or false? In the UK, you should avoid making a V sign, here is a peace sign, with your fingers. Number 5. True or false? In Canada, your spouse should not attend business functions with you. Number 6. True or false? When an American business person is invited to dinner at a colleague's home in Japan, they should bring a special gift. A set of 4 or 6 Japanese sake cups would make a very nice gift. Seven. If a vegetarian ordered a dish without carne in Costa Rica, the food would be served without A. Any type of meat, B. Beef, C. Pork. 8. Salo is a food that was available and eaten during difficult times in Ukraine, when meat was too expensive. Today, Ukrainians continue the tradition and eat this food, which lasts a long time without refrigeration. What is it? A. Potatoes. B. Goat cheese. C. Lard. And for the last question, you need to pause and try to think of as many greetings in foreign languages as you can. For example, say hello in Spanish and Hawaiian, good morning in French and German, good afternoon in Russian and Italian, and so forth. Then count how many foreign languages you used. Each language only counts once. Now let's check your answers. For each correct answer, give yourself 1 point. For the first question, the correct answer is A. It wishes for the early arrival of the sun. The word chopsticks and soon son are pronounced the same in China, and therefore this gift would wish for the bride to give birth to a son in a short amount of time. And you know that everyone wants a son in China. Girls are not welcome. For the second question, the correct answer was C, Czech Republic. Czechs also drink about 3 times as much beer as soft drinks. Generally speaking, the top 10 beer drinking countries in the world are Czech Republic, Ireland, Germany, Denmark, Austria, Luxembourg, the United Kingdom, Belgium, Slovak Republic, and Australia. Here, why not take a beer bath too? For number 3, the correct answer was A, nothing. In Germany, the law states that service charges must be included in all restaurant prices. Thus, tipping is not necessary as it is already accounted for. Additional tipping is at your own discretion. This is actually quite common in Europe overall, and your waiter or waitress are not that nice to you. Number 4, the correct answer is true. When visiting the UK, avoid making a V sign with your fingers. Although in some cultures this may symbolize peace or victory, in the UK as well as in New Zealand, in Australia, it means get lost, piss off, or even the F word. Actually, there's a difference in meaning depending on whether you turn your palm toward yourself or toward that person, but it kind of gets confusing there. Number 5. The correct answer is false. Canadians often include spouses in their business invitations, although it's best to confirm this before making plans to attend. Number 6 is false. It's really false. Gift giving in Japan is extremely important and follows strict formalities and traditions. Gifts are given upon establishing a relationship with a Japanese firm, closing a deal, and when one is invited to a Japanese home. Gifts should always be well made and preferably from the visitor's home region or area. The gift should represent your culture. Japanese like to receive personalized gifts. It is important to avoid giving an even number of anything in Japan, particularly 4, since the word for 4 sounds much like the word for death. Many hospitals don't even have the 4th floor, because who wants to be on the death floor? Number 7, the correct answer is B, beef. While carne in most Spanish-speaking countries translates as meat, in Costa Rica the meaning is beef. So a vegetarian who ordered a dish sin carne may be surprised to find other types of meat in the food. Number 8, the correct answer is C, lard. Salo, pig fat or lard, which is sometimes spread on bread, has been eaten by Ukrainians as a long-standing tradition. Here's a picture of Ukrainian food, and salo is right in the middle. It actually doesn't look that bad, does it? And number 9, how many languages do you think exist in the world? They say about 6,000 to 7,000 languages. That's even without counting local dialects. So, considering that there are between 6,000 to 7,000 languages in the world, you need to have at least 5 to 6 greetings in foreign languages, so not counting your native, to reach 0.1% of total number of languages. So if you have 5 to 6 foreign languages, give yourself 1 point. Some examples of foreign greetings are hola, Spanish of course, hello in Spanish, bonjour, guten Tag, French and German, meaning good day, konnichiwa, which is hello in Japanese, assalamu alaikum, that's a typical Muslim greeting, which means peace be upon you. Dobry den could be Russian, could be Ukrainian, could be Czech, could be Slovakian. It's a kind of universal Slavic greeting. Ciao is hello in Italian. So count how many points you have total, and you pass this culture IQ test if you scored at least 4 points. And now the last principle, principle number 9. In every society, some groups possess distinctive traits that sets them apart from the main culture. While Americans share their unique American culture and have a lot in common, they also have differences. There are multiple subcultures in our society. There are hunters, there are bikers, there are squatters, people who choose to live in empty buildings. They have their own set of beliefs, values, and norms, and they coexist with the main culture. Certain subcultures may become embraced by the larger community and become so popular that they stop being a subculture and are considered the main culture. Case in point, Working out and lifting weights. It used to be a subculture. Some crazy guys spending all their spare time in a dark basement doing their bench presses, bicep curls, squats, deadlifts, sweating and shouting. No one could understand why. Why would you want those ugly muscles anyway? When I was young and had a nicely defined six-pack, my great aunt would look at my stomach and say, "Oh, this is ugly. Hopefully you'll have a nice round belly in the future." And now, weightlifting exercises are extremely popular for both men and women. Same with tattoos and piercing. Very few people had them. Sailors had tattoos and prisoners had tattoos. It was a very small subculture and they were even looked down upon. Nowadays, it's becoming harder and harder to find someone who doesn't have a tattoo. Obviously, this is our main culture now. What's a counterculture? It's also a subculture, but instead of coexisting with the main culture, it wants to change it. Examples range from the civil rights movement, jazz musicians, and LGBT movement to even terrorists. Yes, actually, both hippies who are anti-violence and terrorists are considered countercultures because both groups seek to change the main culture. If they succeed, they too become the main culture. Jazz was created to challenge the classical music of that time, but now jazz is classical music. Finally, there are subcultures that, instead of coexisting with the main culture, exist completely independently of it. These are called institutionally complete cultures. Good examples here are Chinatown, Koreatown, or Little Italy. They're like little countries within a country. You don't even have to speak English or use American currency there, and you'll do just fine. So this concludes our lecture. I hope you had fun.